It is good to see everyone. This is very exciting. You've made it. This is the last one of the day. We're super excited to be here. I feel really honored to share the stage with Gary, who is a legend, who's done so much amazing work. I don't know many filmmakers who've gone as deep and as curiously into the world of design as he has through so many areas, right? Through typography with Helvetica and cities with urbanized, physical products with objectified, and more. So just so much to cover. But just to get things started, like why design? Like why did you pick design as your kind of subject?
Yeah, I had no desire to be a filmmaker at all, but I was just really interested in design, just sort of a design geek and just a fan of design. And I really wanted to watch documentaries about it. I wanted to watch a documentary about typography and graphic design, and 20 years ago, there was nothing. It just didn't exist. And I couldn't figure out why. And I found that if there's something that you're obsessed with and you want to exist and you can't believe like it doesn't exist, and this goes on for months and months, there are probably other people out there who are also obsessing about the same thing and also want it. So in the end, I just decided to teach myself how to make documentaries, and I made Helvetica. Just because I wanted to watch that movie. And everything has been sort of a, kind of a continuance of that. Like, there's other movies that I wanted to watch that didn't exist. So I think a lot of the projects that I've done are those. It's like a question, like, why doesn't blank exist? And then if you are obsessed about it enough, you just figure out a way to make it exist. So.
That's a great, I love how much you've explored in so many different topics that you were curious about and excited to get into a bunch of them. And one of the sort of through lines or threads across them is obviously so much of what you're doing is storytelling, and that's even the title of this conversation. And so just curious, when you think of design and storytelling, how do they overlap? Like what's the intersection of those two things for you?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a lot of intersections. One thing, I've found that documentary film is an amazing way to translate complex design ideas to non-designers. You can do things in a film that I think help people understand what design is about and also what designers do. I've had so many people come up to me and said, I can show this to my parents, and now they understand what I do. I can never do. But making a film is a design. It's a long-form communication design. So there are so many things that overlap. I feel like for me, the best storytelling and sometimes the best design is when the audience or the user doesn't realize that they're being told a story. They're just engaged. And sometimes that happens on an unconscious level, like where you're just, there are things that our brains are just hardwired to do, to solve puzzles and find patterns and things like, see the connections between different pieces of a story. So I think the one example that I can think of that struck me that I didn't realize it was happening until afterwards, but in Helvetica, a lot of times we were kind of going to different cities. I have we can show some of this. It's happening. So we were going to different cities and interviewing designers, but we were also going out in the streets and trying to find Helvetica, and we were filming it. But it ended up being this thing where if you're watching the film, each frame that comes up, there's a word. You're looking for where the word is, and maybe the word says something, and there's a context to it. And we just kind of did this throughout the film as almost like an interstitial between the designer interviews. But it ended up being this thing that your brain starts to kind of get into this groove of finding the type, seeing what it says, what's happening around it. Like, where's the Helvetica? It's like, where's Waldo? Or he's different over here, right? Where's Wally? Is that his name? Yeah, you're trying to spot it, you're trying to find it. It's a way to engage the part of our brain that's sort of hardwired to do that. And I think anytime you do that in whatever you're doing, website or any kind of design, it deepens the engagement. If you're tapping into something that this is a good one because you're waiting for it, where is it? And then it shows up. There are ways that you can kind of play with ideas like that make something that we don't think of a documentary film as being interactive because, the user can't change the direction of it or the outcome. But this does make it interactive because there's a dialogue happening. There's a playfulness, like I'm engaging in intellectual interaction with the viewer.
That's fun. I feel like, yeah, you can't walk that many blocks, especially in like New York City or something, or wherever, I'm sure here too, without finding Helvetica somewhere and to plant that seed, yeah.
London has so much. I mean, there's a whole scene coming up that's all London. I mean, it's everywhere in the world, which was kind of it was reinforcing a point that it's everywhere, but just that act of like putting it on screen so many different ways, it changed the way. At the end of the film, if we're doing this for 85 minutes, I mean, there's interviews and things, but you go outside or you stop watching the movie and your brain is still doing it. You're seeing type, you're thinking, you're looking for it.
Yeah, and you're building connection with people. I mean, it gives people something to talk about and something that they notice, maybe don't notice every day, but is actually in front of us all the time. I think that's really
and that is part of the storytelling with design too. Like, once you make something that was invisible visible, people can't stop seeing it. This is all London.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. There's a nice cue for it.
This is so weird.
What was that? What was going on?
I don't know.
There?
It's
Yeah, wow.
It's bizarre. But
I'm sure you must have so much footage, for a lot of this. I can't imagine how long it probably took to like cull it down.
And which is also design, because that's like you're subjectively kind of choosing what's going to be in the, included or not included.
Yeah, you touched on this a little bit, but you've told a lot of stories and you're finding these nice elements between things. What a lot of us in the audience are whether or not it's explicitly a part of our job, we're telling stories to each other, to our coworkers, we're trying to explain ideas. Do you have any tips for the audience, or for anyone who's trying to become a better storyteller or figure out how to share something that really sticks or just get people to really hear you? Like what comes to mind as things you've learned over the years that just help people tell great stories?
Yeah, that thing that I said earlier of like make it not a story. And I think can we forward? Is this going to be the next one?
Yeah, they can
We're just
change
gonna
to the
skip,
next.
yeah. Oh well, now we're in.
They'll cover it.
Vignelli.
Yeah, you're good.
You don't see Vignelli. Sorry.
Just curious, like so one tip you said was sort of, it doesn't have to be a story or thought of as a story. It could just be something that someone is sharing that, just trying to look for more tips for the audience for what makes a great story.
Yeah. That idea that it's sometimes you're acting on another level, on a subliminal level, that you're not necessarily. It's all storytelling, even the context of like what the presentation is. It's not just about like a list of instructions for the audience or the user to kind of go through, but it's trying to engage them on this other deeper level.
Yep. I guess another cue. I guess there's an image up here of someone that maybe look familiar, maybe not to the audience, but you've had an opportunity to meet so many great iconic figures in design, and would love to just hear about some of those stories that you've picked up over the years from them, or just things you've learned from them, or whatever comes to mind here.
Yeah, I mean, it's been incredible, just like so lucky to meet all these people and talk to them about what they do and share their stories. If you ever want to meet someone who you really admire, just make a documentary film about them, because you can't just like call up Johnny Ive or whoever and say, hey, can I come in and just like hang out and pick your brain? But if you're making a documentary about them, then it's like you can actually like hang out. Vignelli. But the thing that I took away, like we were talking before about like something that like I learned from these people is like Vignelli, Massimo Vignelli, of course, the great graphic designer and product designer. Towards the end of his life, I mean, 6 months before he passed away, I went over to his home and I was trying to do more still photography, and I just spent the day photographing him and his wife Layla in their house. What was so cool is like everything in their home they designed, or most of the things they designed, the cups and the furniture and the clothes, and it was just like this modernist like vision.
They made this, you're saying, or they made some of these objects in there?
Yeah, no, those are cups and plates that they designed, like the clothes that he's wearing designed. It's this idea of like designing the world that you want to live in. Wow. From a spoon to a city, that's what he always said. The designers should be able to create everything from a spoon to a city.
Wow.
So I was taking photographs of them this day, and this is about 6 months before Massimo passed away. And I was working on another film at the time that ended up not really going anywhere, but I'd already done the 3 design films, and I was just kind of like, God, I'm doing the same thing again. I could feel that I was kind of repeating myself and going to these same sort of patterns of how I was working, just sort of getting in this creative like rut. And I told this to him, and like the last thing he really ever said to me was like, he's like, don't worry about it. He's like, you created a language with Helvetica, and you shouldn't be afraid to kind of keep speaking that language. And that stuck with me on a bunch of different levels, because it's not like, oh, just do the same thing and it's okay. But it's, you develop some, an aesthetic or a point of view or a style in everything you do. And it's about bringing that to these different projects that you're doing. And it's not just like copying yourself and doing the same thing over and over again, but it's being confident enough in your perspective and putting your sort of stamp on all these projects that it's noticeable, that people can like feel that it's authentic, authentically you. And it's like, I kind of got out of this. I was so scared. I'm like, God, I'm making another design film. It feels just like the other design films. This is like doing the same thing over and over again. But it sort of freed me from being too freaked out about that. I still try to disrupt a lot of what I'm doing from project to project. But some of it is just us, just the way we look at the world, or the way we look at a project or a job or whatever it is. And I feel like it's okay to kind of bring yourself into that and don't feel like you're being repetitive or boring when you kind of do that and get your language into it again.
Yeah, that's inspiring. I mean, the idea that you can, I think a lot of us probably have worked either in like one discipline, if we're lucky, maybe a few, but to think that like you can extend the things that we've learned as designers to so many different areas of your life, or to, extend that in your case to different subject matters, or bringing yourself into these different kinds of ways of working is really cool.
Yeah, again, there's a fine line between like just doing the same thing over and over again and kind of copying yourself, or having a vision or having a creative point of view and expressing that in different ways that have a variety, but still feel like authentically what you're doing. You're bringing yourself and your influences into it.
So that's a really great segue, the idea of trying to find different ways of doing things. And I want to talk about your latest film, because it seems to embody a totally different way of approaching something and mixing something up. And I just want to hear more about it. Tell us about, I don't know how many people have heard, just share more about what this is about.
Yeah, so this was my latest film, which came out last year, which is a documentary about Brian Eno, the musician and artist. And this was really kind of provoked by this question of, why do films have to be the same every time we watch them? It's kind of something we take for granted now, that like a film is it's got a beginning and an end, and it's going to be the same every time. But I just was asking myself, why? Like, what's the, like, how did we get here to the point where we're watching the same thing over and over and over again? And if you think about it, it's really a constraint that is 130 years old when the medium was born, and it was a physical, tangible thing. It was like literally a line of celluloid that had to scroll through projectors and stuff. And then they had to make copies of those reels. Like it had to be kind of linear and repeatable. But when everything went digital in filmmaking 30 years ago, suddenly that constraint is gone. But we're so used to this idea of it's a locked, fixed story that it's hard for us to think like, well, what if it could change? How would it change? So this was an experiment that in 2019, I started working with a friend, Brendan Dawes, who's an amazing artist based here in the UK, digital artist, and we started experimenting with it. And very quickly, we realized we wanted to make a documentary that could change every time it's screened, but still kind of tell a cohesive story. It would just be a different story every time. And we approached Brian Eno, who had actually turned me down several years before this when I tried to make a documentary about him. But his reason was really interesting. He was like, I hate biographical documentaries, I hate music documentaries, because it's always one person's version of this other person's story. And he didn't want to be someone's story. And there's always more than one story about anyone or anything. So that got us kind of working towards the film. I'll play the trailer of it, and we can talk a little.
Let's take a look.
I haven't seen it.
The question that's been interesting me for my whole life really is, what does art do for us? Why do we want art at all? The kind of change that art makes is at a rather deep level of consciousness. Art is a way we synchronize our feelings about things. I now have 50 years of work behind me, and I talk about it now as if I had the whole thing figured out in my head, but I didn't. They were just feelings of somewhere I was going. When you create something, you're doing this thing that humans are very good at, which is imagining. It's a way of entering another world, looking at its values, seeing how they work out. And that, of course, all impacts on how we think about the world that we actually live in.
We really need to be able to harness the intelligence and creativity of everybody, actually.
Art is a way we do that. I think that's a real hope for the future.
Can you tell us your full name?
Brian, Peter, George, St. Jean le Baptiste de la Salle, Eno.
Thanks. So it's a film about creativity, really. And I think that's, for me, how it overlaps with the design films, which are also about creativity in the creative process. But yeah, this one we wanted to do something different. So we basically, instead of making a film, we made a system in which the film can make itself. And every time it plays, it's a different selection of scenes, different order, different music, different length slightly. They're all around 85-ish minutes. But there are billions of potential versions of the film.
Whoa.
It's always a story about Brian, but it's a different story about him every time.
I mean, I have so many questions, first of all. I've never heard of a film that does this, that like is different. You said over 1 billion different versions you could see, or they're all?
1 billion is like an under count, like more, but.
I mean, where do I start? How does someone walk away? Is it okay that they walk away with a different experience?
Yeah.
How do you have continuity? Like what, tell me more, like how does this work? Like what?
It's a combination of a couple things. There are, like the opening scene with Brian and the closing scene with Brian are always the same in every version. So it's kind of like acts as bookends. And then certain scenes we, weight a little heavier. We want them to appear more often or every time. But 70% of every film is different or can be different. But the system knows, here, I'll show you a little, demo of what the system knows. So we started out with, Brian had 500 hours of archive, and then we did a lot of other filming. And when all that footage is, we can start the, when they start.
Yeah, let's go ahead and play the video. Let's see, I'm so curious.
Here we go. So we start out with all that footage. The system basically kind of knows what is in all these pieces, and will select different scenes and different raw footage pieces and put them into an order that it thinks is going to be a good story flow. It knows how all these things, what they're about, how they can interact. It also is creating transitions between the scenes dynamically in real time. So it's not just like rearranging the same things in a different order. It's just pulling from this huge pool of information. Normally, as a documentary filmmaker, you'd have to get rid of 99% of the footage, and those decisions end up being really subjective. This time, basically, we just let the system, under the rules that we've devised, let it make the film each time. Now, it's part of this thing about I'm not controlling every single output of every single film, but I'm controlling it on a higher level. I'm curating all the elements that go into the system, and then I'm also designing the kind of different ways that they might interact. But then you just let it make what it wants to make, and the way we've designed it, it always works.
This seems like a way better version. I feel like on your iPhone or whatever, it tries to create stories from a bunch of photos and videos over the last few months and just kind of randomly assorts them. But this seems like you're applying more intention behind that system. And I have to ask, what AI models were involved in this, or how did that work? Tell me about that piece of it.
So we basically created our proprietary generative video platform that's human coded. It wasn't based on a model trained on other people's films or anything like that.
Wow.
So it took several years of coding, and also there's as much coding as there is filmmaking here, because we had some incredible editors working with us to kind of like craft all these pieces so that they can kind of appear in lots of different ways. And there is a kind of a bigger underpinning of story structure that is involved in the coding that, again, makes it sort of work as a film every time, even if you're seeing different things each time. It's about one person, so that actually helps a lot. Because you can learn about him working with Bowie like at the 50-minute mark or the 30-minute mark or not at all, and you're still going to get like an engaging story about him. But it just starts to question this idea of like, could we make films that can evolve and can change over time? Or like this documentary, we keep adding more footage and we keep revising the software, so it's never like done. I've added hours of footage, new footage to it since the premiere at Sundance, and we're into Gen 4 of the software now. So it's a completely different way to think about filmmaking.
That's amazing.
And film watching. Because if you watch a version here in London and a friend watches it in New York, you're going to be like, well, God, what
did you see?
Yeah. Exactly. Did you see this? It's kind of like when a band plays and a friend sees them in another city. You're like, oh, what was the encore? Oh, they did this.
I love that.
It's more of a performance than just kind of like this static film. And that's really what I wanted to bring to it.
Yeah, I mean, that's amazing. The idea that, I feel like a lot of us in the room, we're building things that don't have like linear beginnings and ends. We're constantly evolving and changing the work around us. It's just super inspiring. I mean, how do you, now that you've done this or you've made something, is this something you're planning to repeat in other contexts? Like, when do you decide if a film should like be made this way? Are you going to apply this to past films? Like, tell me about how you're thinking about this.
Yeah, well, it has to be used in a way that's not a gimmick, that's actually leveling up the storytelling potential of an idea. And there are multiple new projects that we're working on. Brendan and I started a studio called Animorph, and we're like collaborating with other filmmakers and streamers to like do kind of new interesting experiments with this idea.
Oh, cool.
I'm making another design film. I can't tell you what it is right now, but and that's going to be a normal film. There are still, I think, it's like, what's the right tool for the job? And sometimes a linear film will be that. Like, I don't think the generative approach is a replacement for linear films, but it's this other pathway. So I'm excited to explore that, because I think once we wrap our brains around like, how would you write a film, like a fiction film that could change, it could. We've never had to think about this as filmmakers before, because we didn't have the technical capability. So now that we do, we get to kind of start brainstorming, well, what are interesting ways to use that? So I think the future of what film is going forward is going to look much different from the past 130 years, where we've basically been doing the same thing over and over.
Yeah, that blows my mind. You're right. 130 years we've been watching things in almost the same way, like such subtle tweaks. Like, okay, we black and white film, then color film, and you're totally flipping it on its head.
We got really good at CGI and graphics.
Right. Just getting a little bit more high fidelity.
But there have been amazing stories told within that constraint.
Yeah, it does work.
But I find it hard to believe, like the Lumiere brothers in like 1885, it came up with this first experiment with the medium, and that was it. That's the perfect like form of it. Like, I just feel like we were so blown away by motion pictures that we just kind of took that constraint for granted, and then we've had generations of people kind of making and watching films the same way.
Yeah.
I think there's some interesting possibilities to do it differently.
It's fun. I mean, we just followed a talk a lot about the idea that even websites and things have been also the same for a while, and it's been far less time than there has been films.
Totally.
There's so much room here.
And it's part of this, always question this stuff, always question the status quo, and be curious about other ways, because just because it's always been done that way doesn't mean it's the only way or the best way.
Yep. So I think I don't know how much time we have left, but I have a couple more questions, and then we'll just wrap up here. There's just so much to take in with a lot of this work. Like, how do you find your inspiration? Like, what triggers something where you're like, oh, this is something I want to try? Or like, how did you,
Yeah. I can tell you what I don't do, and I don't go watch a bunch of other documentaries or other films. I feel like you have to do something outside of your field to really get inspiration. You can pick up little tips and tricks and things from other films or other websites or apps or whatever, but to really be inspired, I feel like I'm always doing this thing that's like transference. It's like I'll go to a museum and I'll see a really interesting piece of conceptual art, and I'll just think, okay, well, what's the documentary film component? Like, what's how do I bring that into what I do? Or like, what's the version of that in what I do? So I'm constantly doing that, like looking at books or reading music or seeing art or fashion or anything. And I'm like, what's the equivalent of what they're doing with that idea? I'm not copying the idea, but I'm trying to kind of transfer it to what I do. So I do that probably every day, and I'm constantly like scribbling down things like in other fields that I think, okay, well, there's something, a kernel of this idea that I could pull over and do a different version of, like recontextualize it for filmmaking. And I think that is a universal for any work that we're doing.
Yeah, I was going to say that this is inspiring me because I feel like a lot of times when I'm working on software, we tend to look at other software as like the main source of inspiration. But what you're saying is like there's so much out there to like look at and internalize to.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's so many great tools to like express your creativity. Figma certainly makes some amazing ones. But like, there's also that need to get like inspiration that's outside of what you're working on, and then express that with those tools.
So what's next for you? What else what's on the horizon? What are some things you're thinking about? You mentioned you might be working on another film around design. That's exciting. Any other kind of things that you're looking forward to?
Yeah, more films, more experiments with Anamorph and the generative stuff, and yeah, just more questioning. I think that's the stay curious and just keep asking why all the time. Yeah.
So to close things out, I listened to some podcasts where they do these lightning rounds at the end, which are kind of like random fun questions. You've given us so much to think about, but I thought it'd be fun to get to know just you and the human side of behind the work. So just 4 quick ones, and then that's it for us. And the first one, I'll give you a softball to start with. Morning person or night person?
Night, definitely a night person.
Second one, favorite designed object in your home or otherwise?
This is hard. I have a lot of like favorite design objects, stuff from Dieter Rams. So I made a film about like a vintage Braun radio that I really love. But I have a vintage 911 Porsche that is probably my favorite design. The design DNA in that car is so strong that you can customize it. You can do so many things with those cars, and they still are just like, it's pretty much the perfect vehicle.
That's awesome. Probably a lot of sub-design elements within it too to get to. So next one, if you could instantly master any skill, if you could just be amazing at any skill, just somehow instantly, what comes to mind as something you wish you could?
Guitar playing. That's got to be it.
Ooh.
I've played guitar my entire life, and I'm still like average, like intermediate level. And there are some people that just can pick up instruments, and they're just great. They can just flows, out of them on any instrument or languages or whatever. But I'm not that person. I'm the person that's really got to like, painstakingly,
Yeah, I mean, it is like a language, like you said. It's like fluent in a different language.
No, I wish that could be me.
And then the final one related to music also. First concert.
Oh, first concert, Queen.
What? You saw Queen?
Yeah.
That is an incredible first
14,
concert.
yeah. News of the World tour.
Wow.
Yeah, that was great. And I also saw them again because I was just telling my guy who drove me over here, I went to Live Aid here at Wembley and saw Queen again at Live Aid.
Oh my God. And it was probably different each time. It was probably different
every time.
Well, this has been amazing. Let's get a round of applause for Gary Hustwit.
Thank you so much, you guys.